our panel on diversity. So I guess uh, I guess we'll start off with just some introductions. Just a little bit about our panelists and a little bit about our panelists and what teams they're from. Um, my name's Stephen Pelser. I am the programming mentor for G3 robotics for G3. So let's go around. I'm going to go across the bottom of my screen here. Richard, you're first on my list here.
Nice, I love being first. Hello, my name is Richard. I am a veteran member of DP Robotics. I am the graphic design kind of head. That's kind of what I do on the business part of D3, and looking forward to getting started.
Okay. Mecca?
Okay, hi, I'm Maria. I'm on Keep Robotics and I'm their social media manager.
Okay. And Elaine?
Hi, I'm Elaine De Leon. I'm the captain of this box 6023.
Okay. And I think Jake's having some mic problems, but that's Jake. He's our business lead at G3. Um, is that right? Yeah, I got your title right? Business lead. And Zoe? Oh, Zoe? Hear me? Oh. All right, we'll come back around to Zoe. Diego, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Diego of Team 1648 G3 Robotics, and I'm a veteran EO member on the team.
Okay. And I guess Zoe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Zoe. I'm on eRobotics and I am on the mechanical team and I'm the safety captain.
Oh, okay. And so that's our panelist. Just a couple opening notes on what we're going to be talking about here. And also for if anybody wants to ask questions and stuff after during our Q&A section. One of the things is that we're going to be talking about a lot about identity. Obviously that's a big aspect of diversity. And I wanted to make sure that we're specific when we talk about that, just because it can get very vague. Diversity is sometimes a word that kind of that can kind of blur what we might be discussing. So if we want to talk about gender, let's just talk about gender specifically. If we want to talk about race, let's talk about race specifically. And if we want to talk about different races, let's talk about them specifically. That way we can kind of know what we're talking about and not make it muddied by a vague term like diverse, because it's a very broad category. And if anything makes anybody listening or even us up here on the panel uncomfortable, just the easiest thing might be to shoot a message to to the um, the panel just to let us know, because our whole thing here is we don't want to do harm, we want to do good. So um, let's get started. I'm gonna be asking questions, and we'll kind of start the discussion there, and hopefully. Um, at the end of this, if anybody wants to post questions into the Q&A or discuss them. I don't know if do we have the power to unmute people that are that are participating. If so, we'll try and do that. I think we might. I don't know. We'll see. But just to see, just to hopefully talk with people that are attending. So I'll kick off with one is what kind of individual experiences have each of you had on your first team that might be related to identity? This one's kind of a pretty broad one. If there's anything that kind of comes to mind, and if uh, one thing that I know that during like some of our preliminary discussions and everything, this might be as simple, it might be something that's very, kind of upfront. It might be something more subtle, just like having more peers to be around. And each of you probably has a very different experience, especially since your teams are very different. So, anybody want to start off? Otherwise, I can kind of I can drive it if nobody wants to jump in.
So I can jump in. Hi, again, my name is Richard. I've been on G2 Robotics since my ninth grade year starting out, beginning to end. It's definitely morphed and it's become a more inclusive experience, but when it first started out, there wasn't a lot of me in terms of my skin. There wasn't, a lot of diversity other than, Caucasian, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it was hard to get into the team when you didn't really have too many people that you can relate with on more than a baseline level. I only made, real companions with about 3 members that were my skin tone, and those were the only 3 on the team. So, given. But as the team grew, as I've been on the team, more people have started coming in of different ethnicities, different races, different experiences, different backgrounds, and it's become more of an inclusive space. And I think that, time really, solved that problem of not knowing that you could fit in and not feeling like you have a place and finally finding one.
All right. Some of the other experiences. Mecca, you're on Eve, right? Mecca and Zoe, you're both on Eve. How I suspect you all's experience was very different than that as far as diversity. You guys are an all girls team, is that right?
Yes, we are. And we're all girls of color too. So it wasn't really, I've had experiences with non-diversity within the team,
Mm-hmm.
but rather with events we would go to. I first started out in FTC, and one of the meets we went to, I believe it was the person who did the inspections for the robots. And like I asked him for a copy of what was it? I think it was maybe the schedule or
Mhm.
I'm not even sure, but
Some benign
he
piece
looked,
of paper, essentially.
yes, very, very. And he kind of sneered at me a little bit. It was
Uh,
kind of like, here you go. And I'm like, oh my, you don't have to be that rude.
right.
So it just felt like it was kind of directed at me, and but not in like not in a like, I'm just mad at you just because like, I just felt like it was because of like who I looked like.
Right. So, and what is that like going from like the experience of inside the team to the broader, the broader community in that regard? Like,
It's not that bad. It's not that much of a huge wake up call.
right.
Um, a lot of the events we would go to, there would be a good amount of people of color,
Mhm.
whether it be Black people or Asians or um, Latinx. So it was pretty good in that regards. That was really the only major experience I've had with being like discriminated against, though,
Mhm.
that I can speak on personally.
Zoe, do you have any, since you're from the same team, do you have any?
Um, I guess I would say like starting FRC. A lot of teams came to help us, but their help was more like they didn't think that we could do it.
Okay.
They were
Well,
more,
there's a doubt.
yeah.
Okay. Elaine?
Hi again, I'm Elaine, and it was this person that I see often, RC. It just I mostly take pictures when we go to fundraising, and that person does see what I'm capable of doing when I'm on the robot, and he just treat me less than my other teammates
Right.
because like I'm the only girl, like how they treat girls sometimes, and these FRC that they're like more less than men, that we're not
Right.
doing the same thing as men. But yeah, that's the only thing.
So that kind of that subtle kind of doubt and pressure type of thing. And
Yeah.
and in this case, because of your gender.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, Diego, I don't have your picture. So you're on G3 as well. Do you want to talk about your experiences again? Not necessarily, explicit events, but just anything as far as, seeing peers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for sure what Richard said kind of holds true. Like there are not too many people, or there weren't too many people of color on G3 robotics when we were kind of like starting out there in ninth grade. But as we've gone on, it has increased a little bit more. Although in like more engineering related fields, I feel like there's still kind of a lack of that representation. Um, but in my mind, I it doesn't make it harder for me to work, just maybe a little bit more sometimes uncomfortable because you don't, entirely know kind of what people are thinking about you. At least that's what my experience is.
And I mean, that can be an aspect of, even though you can still work well, not having that stress can also make you work better, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And
um, so did you have
oh no, I think I was about done.
okay. So that does kind of bring up another thing, is like the idea of this came up in some of our discussions before about like the different kind of aspects of being on a first team. I mean, there's engineering, and then inside of engineering there's mechanical, there's programming, there's and then there's the media teams and that kind of thing. Um, do you guys see a lot of differences there, especially and we kind of touched on this when we discussed before, especially in terms of gender has seemed to kind of uh, there are certain roles that are gendered on teams and things, and sometimes it's hard to go against the grain. Does anybody want to kind of talk about that? Like, is it
Um,
more difficult to be a woman going into engineering, and or are you being kind of funneled into different ways, or do you feel more comfortable in one area than the other because of that?
so obviously I am not a woman, but I can speak to the experience that there's a lot of one-sided things. So like engineering does not have on G3, engineering does not have too terribly a bunch of, women, and we have a lot of women on the team. Like 50% of it obviously is women. And but not a lot of it is going towards engineering. That's the business in terms of like outreach and award stuff and drones for good, which is our program, and they fall more and lean more into that. And the women are fully capable. A senior that just graduated, Kate Crutcher, was on almost all of the, sub teams that we've had there. But she just always fell and leaned a little bit more towards the business side. I don't know if that's any fault of the team. Oh, I'm sure it's not. It's just a matter of preference. But it's heavily skewed to not being a male. Engineering is more of a male, type role. Just in the way it's represented right now.
Hmm. Like for those of you on Eve, do you find being on Eve Robotics like um different than other experiences in like STEM and everything like that? Just having a place where there's not I mean, it's not a question of whether you're gonna be a woman in that role.
I
Oh
would
yeah. Oh, you can go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
go.
Go ahead, Zoe.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, yeah.
Um, well, the whole like creation of our team was because we wanted to have our teammates be able to pick out the roles that they wanted, like, and not just be subjected to a specific side of the team, because that was our founder's experience on two teams that she had been on previously. She was always pushed into like marketing and stuff, and she was really, really good at engineering. Um, So it's just kind of like a thing where I guess like they would think that girls are more interested in like arts and crafts rather than engineering. Um, and engineering might be something that's more
Right.
something that boys would do, but not girls. But
And do you have to add to that, Mecca?
So before I joined Eve, I was really into, I guess I was kind of burdened by the stigma around girls being in like engineering and things like that. And I thought I would only really prosper in roles such as like marketing or, we call it the outreach part. But those are, don't get me wrong, those are things that I enjoyed as aspects of the team. But joining Eve helped me realize that like I can do like the engineering, I can be a coder, and I can do all of that without having to feel like I don't belong because it was such an inviting community. And I guess um that was like the experience that really like launched me into loving robotics.
Okay, so that kind of comes up with something I mean, feel free to jump in on still on that question, everybody, as far as like that kind of experience. But that also kind of comes into a thing of like actually actively taking initiative for addressing diversity as opposed to just hoping it happens. So one thing that came up, let me just go through my question. So what do you think teams can do to take initiative for for diversity, um, and even like and even for like you guys from Eve, like what do you think, as far as suggestions for teams that are doing that, like these ideas that the idea of not being kind of pigeonholed into different groups because because everyone has some similar identity there. Those kinds of suggestions to other teams. But what kind of initiatives do you guys think that teams could take to increase diversity? And in fact, we have a few questions coming in about like have people done what have teams done in particular to increase the amount of diversity on teams? And also in this question, also think about both gender and race, because we've kind of touched on this a little bit, that uh, a lot of you seem to feel like gender has been making strides in becoming more diverse in other teams. So I want to kind of pick up some of those threads there. And
Yeah, I can pick up. I think that to kind of increase diversity and make it so that more people want to join, I think they can be like prosper on the team, is to show like to show incoming people like your actual team members and like who you're going to be working with. And I think that if you see people who are like you, who are either just on the team or even in positions of power, it kind of you can kind of relate to it, and you can think that even though like I don't think I can do this, there's people like me on the team, and so if they can do it, I probably can too. And I think just having that um like people already there that are representing, I guess, different aspects of diversity, so whether that's gender or race, um it is important to increasing the amount of diversity in terms of gender and race that you have on your team.
that first example, the archetype that you can look to and say that what to see what's possible.
Right. Sorry.
Anyone
Wait.
else?
Uh,
You got anything? No, if you want to add to it, Diego.
no, that's fine.
No.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Just being able to see those similar faces, knowing that there are people that like you that are, it's still a challenging environment. You still have to not slack. It's still work, but it makes it easier to into that environment, get into the groove of things, and understand how things work and what's going on. An example is on the engineering side of G3, not a lot of people that look like me, except for, you know, a senior or a sophomore at the time. I ended up kind of going to electrical, one because in my previous experiences, I was the one doing the programming, I was the one doing the electrical side of things, and so I was like, okay, well, I should be good here. And you know, there were a couple more people that looked like me. It was a lot more of a welcoming community because it was a chill, more of a more of a relaxed space and everything.
I'm the
So
mentor. Let's not a pushover.
what? What? No, never. but yeah. And so I think I agreed that, you know, gender's been making strides in that aspect, you know, especially there, you know, we have had 2, 3 women captains of the whole team, and I think that was, you know, an amazing thing. Over my whole time, I've only seen one male actually run the team, so it's definitely a great experience.
But like, how does that happen? You guys, like, I mean, it's like seeing somebody there, we could see, I think we can all kind of agree that that's a benefit to kind of recruiting and getting people interested and letting people envision themselves in on these teams. But like, that doesn't just happen, right? We need to, that needs to be done. Any, I don't know. We did talk a little bit about like the idea of how do people hear about teams and joining teams and things like that. Um, those kinds of outreach and everything. Have you guys? Well, what are some of the problems that kind of come up there, or some of the, or some of the success stories of there?
So some things I definitely would suggest teams doing is definitely doing outreach events specifically geared towards people of color and inviting them in to telling them like, hey, you can do robotics too. Um, Definitely it's all about not judging the book by its cover when it comes to recruitment, because you might have the mindset of like, oh, we want them. Oh, look at them. We also want them. No, you have to like, get to know the person, learn their skills, and if they're going to be a good asset to the team, then invite them in. Um, Definitely, I feel like with gender, especially, I feel like we're doing a good job of promoting it, especially for women. There's organizations dedicated to promoting and supporting women in engineering and STEM. And I think in that aspect, it's doing good. So once you put in the diversity, I feel like it's like a win-win situation now.
Plus, just getting more members. I mean, that's like a huge difficulty in
Yes,
general sometimes.
definitely.
Um, Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Um, one thing. So one thing that came up in the chat, like the question itself was for teams that have a majority males in engineering, what are some strategies or things we can do to attract and engage female members? And then also, kind of dovetailing with that, um, some of the things, like some were mentioned, like Richard, you mentioned like about how, like as far as gender goes, there's been some movement there on G3 and things like that. Obviously, Eve is in a different is in a different in a different situation as far as how like what issues they deal with as far as team composition and stuff like that. But on those type things, in addition to what are some strategy of things, what are some strategies that you think that have worked, like you guys mentioned, like the success in women in STEM and stuff like that? And like, were there any programs for the women, like any programs that you responded to? Obviously, Eve is a big program that was responded to, its mission, with its mission being part of its mission. Elaine, did you have any? Were there anything like coming up as far as what got you, into a robot team?
Well, at first, this box started in diverse school. It's called international school when you don't know how to speak the English language. You go
Uh-huh.
to the house to learn. And when we first started, there was a lot of diversity students
Uh-huh.
from around the world. They spoke in like 50 or 100 language, like overall. And how they spread the word, it was by my coach, Mr. New. He was trying to get people in. But as far as now, we spread out and like they're now in college and they left the team. So now we just took by a bunch of guys and me. And I try to spread the word and around my school, but none of my friends like engineering. And I'm just like, well, you can join, but they just in engineering classes, but they don't like putting their hands in.
Do you find that hard sometimes? And this is for all of you. Do you find it hard sometimes to bring along peers that might not even know what you're even talking about saying you're on a FRC robot, like a
Um,
first robotics team?
yes, because my school, they have a pretty good FTC team.
Uh-huh.
I'm not able to do FTC because I have another 10 and it's not in my school. So I try to spread the word there, but they're like, no, thank you. I don't like FRC. I prefer to stick
Mm.
to FTC. I'm just like, okay.
Uphill battle. Anyone else?
Yeah, that's definitely an experience that goes for me too. I've always, told them, hey, G3 is a really good experience. There's I could use someone like you of your talents, to come and, a lot of the answer, is actually, well, there's not many people. You're the only one, right? And like the only one, what? It's like you're the only black person on the team. It's like, well, there's like two more. You won't be alone. So that's one deterrent, but another is the commitment. Not everybody, is in for engineering and all of that. I've always, when I'm reaching out, I never tell them, hey, this is an engineering team. I said, this is a team that does a lot of things, and I'm mostly repping, outreach. I'm doing like coding because not many people know how to work with their hands. I did not grasp the fundamentals of actually working with my hands while I was doing engineering, but I was really good at like understanding the math. And so, sometimes I'd be like, hey, give me the math. I can do some of the math that we can do. Um, and so I think if we promote that more, that, hey, if you come in, one, there will be more people like us if you start that train. But also, that there's more to offer than just, making the robot. The robot is only the first of many iterations of what the team has to offer. And I think promoting that more will get us far.
All right. Also, the idea of the community interaction. Uh, what about like things we've been talking mostly about inside of teams, diversity and stuff, but also what about like diversity in terms of outreach and things like that, and different kind of commitments to community that first teams are, it's kind of part of the whole mission statement of these teams. Um, if anybody wants to kind of just bring up stuff they've been doing on their team, or uh, how some of their outreach kind of dovetails into diversity, and because a lot of these programs are creating interest in science and things like that, and I think a lot of the like kind of girls in STEM types of initiatives that went on, I mean, they're definitely very much in the vein of a lot of things that I think a lot of robot teams did. Any success stories? Any kind of like, we were out doing this event and this little kid who reminded me of me and that kind of thing, and like the the more upbeat, I guess, stories.
So this was back when I used to do FTC, and we were at a Girl Scouts event. I think it was like the Girl Scouts conference. And we had a booth set up, and we had a robot from a previous year to demo. And I saw this little girl walk up. She was like, "Oh, this looks cool." And we like demonstrated what the robot did and stuff like that. And I guess it reminded me of me because when I was little, I actually came upon an FRC competition at a STEM festival. I think that's what it was. And I was like, I want to do that someday. That looks so cool. And so I just think it's really good that you have an impression on younger kids because they can grow up knowing that they can do this. So I think
I mean, like just visibility alone can do some things.
yeah, definitely.
So, if anybody else has any stories as well, one thing that came up, I think this is kind of related to what you said, Richard. Um, when recruiting, try inviting them in on the business marketing side and then introduce them to the engineering side. So I think there's a little bit of agreement that you can trick people into getting into engineering.
That's
I still
definitely
don't
true.
understand why it's really hard to convince people to get into engineering. Meanwhile, we have the problem that a lot of women are discouraged from even getting into engineering, and they're saying we have to trick people. How about this?
Well, I mean, I think that the problem with getting into engineering is because it's like going to college and being like, I want to be a math major. It's like, yeah, you think you want to be a math major, but math major is extremely hard. And the barrier with engineering is that, like, it's a roadblock that you have to learn. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes experience. And a lot of people find that barrier challenging, especially when you're in high school. When you're in high school, you're thinking, I only got 4 years before I need to be an adult, you know? And so that barrier of, well, am I gonna really be able to learn something in 4 years when I can just try and do something else that I'm good at and try and improve on that? That's definitely a barrier that comes up in terms of getting into the engineering field.
This
But I
actually kind of
agree.
relates to one of those points that have come up, in our discussion. One that, like I keep it keeps coming up because I keep bringing it up. The idea that what I've noticed in my experience in kind of technological fields and things is that a lot of technology related groups, teams, jobs, things like that, they try and distance themselves from the idea of like social issues, things like diversity, and they, kind of they say, it's just pure meritocracy type of thing, and all, they have all these kind of mythology around there. What about that attitude as far as and this happens even if it's a technology related group without not even being a technology issue. Just I mean just in those things there's this idea that uh just um just just if they have the skills then they can do whatever they want. What do you think? I mean, do you guys find that as my kind of my am I imagining as far as it's different in other kinds of groups and clubs and areas of interest, that kind of thing. Do you find a kind of colorblind, gender blind mythology in some technology areas that isn't present in others?
Um, I don't really know.
Mhm.
I think that electrical, again, bringing up your part of your side of things. I think that it's more of a inviting thing just because you deal with electronics, you deal with all that stuff every day, so it's more of a you can come into it more with knowledge that you know and the curiosity of how it works. That's what I went into it with. When I went into programming, I was like, I wonder how my favorite video game that I like to play on my cell phone is made. What does that have to do with making the robot? Is there a way that we can improve it to make, it look seamless and stuff like that? I think that's more of an inviting that curiosity. Engineering is almost everywhere that it's more of a daunting thing. It's like looking at a big number in reality and not actually knowing the scale of what that big number is. And I think that's kind of what engineering poses.
So if Richard's done insulting my area of the robot team, does anybody else have some things to say about that? The easy part of programming and electrical systems on a robot as opposed to working a lathe. Anybody else have have
Wait,
something?
just to for
Um,
your oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, you can go.
I was just gonna say, just to clarify, were you asking about the color blindness in robotics compared to other like school clubs, or
Yeah, like technology. I'm saying,
okay?
like it happens in technology, which I think to me, from what I've seen, it really comes up on the G3 team. But
Yeah, I think that's very true. That kind of in technology, people have just I don't know why, but it's they turned a very blind eye to kind of reaching out like with diversity in terms of like gender and race. Uh, it's just something that's not really mentioned that much. You can kind of go like however far without even talking about like what what gender and race means to your team, or what like how it
or
impacts.
why is our team composition like
Right.
this?
Yeah,
Right.
you can go throughout your whole 4 years without even talking about that. I'm mentioning that in robotics, where I feel like as if you were to go into other clubs, it would be a lot more like this, like it'd be the opposite of that. It'd be a lot they would mention a lot more why kind of we have this representation, and how we got to this point, and why it's important. And for some reason, just I guess robotics and technology fields in general seem to not include that really.
Becca, you had a follow up there?
Oh, yeah. So, I don't exactly like really pay attention to something like that, which now that I think about it, it should be something that I pay attention to when it comes to just, not speaking of like um social issues within technology. I think specifically with African Americans, the education system is kind of in a way designed to fail us in that way, because there are situations in some schools where all of the people of color or the African Americans would be in the lower level classes, and they don't have as much skill level or access to higher level clubs with that involve like technology careers and gearing you up for technology careers. So that could be a reason why there's not a lot of representation, if there is like not a lot of representation. Sometimes there is,
Right.
but in cases they're not, that's kind of what I think is the reason.
Yeah, so this is in these types of discussions, there's always this chicken and egg of pipeline, and or how do we get the team members if they don't have the skills coming up? How are they supposed to get the skills coming up if they don't have clubs and things to join and that kind of thing? Um,
Yeah,
what-
I would piggyback off of Mecca and saying that God, I lost my train of thought.
oh boy. Right, somebody I know says all your birds flew away. Like,
Okay, here,
yeah.
here we, that's really funny. I'm gonna start using that. But what I was gonna say is that I think just in terms of talking about diversity and inclusion in general, it's a lot harder to speak on it when you're not actively in it, like so like African Americans, all we do is talk about, well, not all we do is, but a lot of our conversations are about, racism and how that's affecting us and what we've seen and how we deal with it and how we feel about it. So that's kind of part of everyday language when we get around people that aren't us, that don't look like us, that isn't our close friend group. It's a lot harder to talk about something like that because it's like, what if I make somebody uncomfortable? What if somebody has the different opinion, and then that sparks a lot of major stuff, and it's like, it's better for me to keep quiet and not really talk about it until, excuse me, I feel like I'm more comfortable. um I don't think that should be the case anymore. I think that we need to talk about it more, because it is important to begin that line. If if we want more people to start coming in, then we need to start so they can begin to come in.
So unless somebody else has something to add here, I wanted that kind of dovetails into two issues that I had on my list of things. One is if you guys feel like, obviously it's important all your life, but since we're talking about FIRST and these robot teams that we're on, do you feel like those are environments that you can express issues and ideas about diversity? And then also, what do you think about kind of our community, like, the first communities responsibility to kind of, there's been a lot of upheaval right now in our society about race. It's come to the forefront. And what do you think our first community's responsibility is to that? Those are two things, though. Like, if you feel safe about talking about it now, but it kind of led into that, in my mind, to that idea of like what's going on in our country right now. That's a big one, by the way. That's but we're getting towards it, so I wanted to, this is the finale. This is our big
So with okay, the first part of your question was talking about
if you feel like you could talk about.
okay, so as far as being like in the teams, I feel like they should be places where you can express your opinion or thoughts on diversity. Because in all career fields, that's always some sort of issue. And so if it's not a place, I really feel like you're probably doing something wrong because, your teammates should feel safe enough or confident enough to say, well, guys, I think, maybe there should be more diversity in whatever we're doing or in the team overall. And it's just really, I feel like that's a must.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think that having a place that you can actually talk about diversity and how that impacts, the overall state of things is a great way to get the train rolling. I think, and first, I haven't really had the drive to, you know, go up and just start talking about how, first should be more diverse. I think it's not doing a bad job of being able to be inclusive. Could it do more? Sure, everything could do more. We could do more as people, but it can do more in terms of getting, people of color, people of different backgrounds, people of different ethnicities into higher roles, into just learning about engineering in general. It can definitely do more, but I personally have not had the urge to just, go up in front of the, robots and in front of everybody and be like, I think that diversity is an issue.
Um, so one thing Joanna pointed out, Richard, that we're not 50-50 in gender. We are about 1/3 female on G3.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I mean that also, kind of brings up, again, I haven't seen a whole lot of first. G3 is my first kind of foray into this. So, but I mean, I do see a lot of things in there in that whatever the composition is today, that's the thing that's going to happen tomorrow unless somebody does something, right? So, like, for example, Richard was pointing out, like, on the electrical team, there is actually a lot of the electrical team is one of the more diverse aspects of our team in that it has, over the few years I've been there, has had a relatively balanced split of men and women in leadership, not in leadership, and this is a sample of three teams, three seasons, like the end of one, the full of middle, and then kind of this tail one, and then and also with race. But in our case, weighted more towards Asian than black, or and then the rest white. So, um, and then in fact, our what's it called, our mechanical team, one of the things that came up at the beginning of it was the idea that there's not enough women representation there. um do you guys see that, like, this idea of, like, whatever it is, it's going to keep doing that until you shove it? Like, do you guys ever experience that, this idea of, like, that momentum of things going, that if you don't push it, it's not going to move?
Yeah, I totally think that's something that's gonna happen. Like, a lot of the time people kind of expect things to change without you actually doing anything,
Mhm.
and that's it's hardly ever going to happen. I feel like if you actually want things to change, you shouldn't just be like, oh, let's make a change, but you actually have to do steps. It's not about what you say, it's about the actions that you take to include more people on your team and in these different positions. I think that it's very important to actually have to actively go out of your way to look for maybe more to include more minorities and more underrepresented people, and I think that's very, very important, and it's very necessary.
All right. What are we doing on time? What are we scheduled for? Anybody know?
Y'all are scheduled to end at 11, so we've got about 10 minutes left.
Oh, 10 minutes.
Do we want to answer questions from the chat?
I've been flowing a few of them in. I would like more if anyone has any more, or questions for the panelists is another good kind of thing to do. Let's see. I'm just seeing if there's much I missed here. Some of these I kind of rolled into our discussion.
There was a statement in the chat by Coach Akili. I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. She said, or they said the change can only happen when the current or present people are willing to share, and I definitely agree. I think an experience I've had of that is one of our outreach events is called the Gaming Gauntlet. When I joined the team, the reason why I joined the team is because I was like, I would love to run this event, put my own spin on things. As an artist, I just kind of float towards stuff like that. And I think that had that opportunity not been afforded to me by Jake when he took over the reins a little bit of part of, the marketing team, he was like, would you like to do this? I think I would have never been able to have that experience of actually leading and forwarding a part of the team. And I think that's just something that really hits home.
Yeah, and that's a really good example of that statement. Just the idea of like, that's if you're already in power, you have to share it for unless something more drastic happens. So that's the best way to do it, is to go ahead and share it. It's like, so do we have any other things coming in? Let me see if I got anything in my notes as far as anything that we've been discussing over the last few weeks that you want to share with this audience here.
Okay, so I saw a question by Joanna, and they said that how do you guys think we can increase diversity and recruitment among incoming freshmen? I think this goes back to be like the leaders, like definitely taking action, helping to promote their team to their audience that they want to promote to, whether it be all different types of people of color, and definitely um, giving them mentorship, helping them out, making them feel comfortable. It's all about that. Because I feel like that's what I had when I joined Eve, and that's something that'll help you along the way, is to have people who are willing to support you. And it has to come from your heart, because if you're a team who's predominantly Caucasian, only doing this because they'll look bad if they don't get more people of color on the team, it's not worth it. It's not. Why are you doing this? Like,
This was kind of a recurring theme that came up through a lot of this, was the idea of the checkbox versus actually doing something about diversity. The idea of like, I'm just trying to, get this many diverse people on my team, right? Like you're coming to the team with some sort of like some sort of material that they can harvest or something, like this like a diversity, just getting diversity in and checking off the box, we're diverse, as opposed to what you're like, the idea of like being a mentor and be, and having different people on the team so that the next person can see that. I didn't even see. I'm having a scrolling problem because I didn't even see that question. And so now you're saying, so this is kind of related. Joanna just put in. She's our G3 captain. So she's coming in here and saying, what do we need to do, guys? So how should FIRST respond to the Black Lives Matter movement? So that's kind of related to that idea of like, what is FIRST, responsibility to, to the community to.
If I had a suggestion, I think that this actually goes through the recruitment process as well, is maybe, before you start inviting everybody in, maybe target, the colored, background, be like, hey, we are holding an interest meeting for our team, or we're holding an interest meeting for engineering, and what FIRST can do for you to, Black, Hispanic, Asian, minorities to come in and just let us show you what we can do for you. It's like, you may not see a lot of people like you, when you first, or when you actually begin the process, if you begin the process, but during this first period of getting to know it, you're comfortable enough to understand what is going on, rather than just being shoved out there into this massive world. I think that that's a really good way
If
that we
you
can
all were
begin that training.
new to this whole area, would you appreciate somebody just saying, we'd like to recruit, like we're doing a recruiting thing for students of color because we don't have a lot, and we want if they were just playing about what they're doing, because a lot of times those things can be very vague, right? Like they'll make it they'll go around everything except saying we want to talk to more people of color. Like, do you find it better to just be upfront, or it's like, what is the good balance there?
I think it is important for teams to like specifically mention that they want people of color. I think that maybe the phrasing like we don't have too many and we want you on our team is a little iffy, because it's
please nobody use what I just said as a recruitment technique.
But I think that would help include people by just like letting them know that you're wanted. We want you on our team. And we think that you could bring like a valuable experience to our team and like a new perspective. And I think that's very important if you want to increase diversity among your team. So
focusing on those things that you think would be positive from it coming out.
Right.
We're running up to time. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add?
I just wanted to say real quick, definitely, I think it's important for teams to be upfront, or else you'll kind of be looked at weird, like, oh, you're not really saying it outright, you're just implying it. But what was I gonna say? Definitely, it's all about diction. Choose your words very carefully, because you say one thing wrong, and you might anger a lot of people. That's all I have to say.
It's definitely a sensitive topic for sure.
And that's also like having a person of color help write the statement can often avoid a lot of that. It's because people, the more that's one of the bad things, that the more diversity you have, the less it would be a problem to create more diversity, right? That's kind of one of the, because somebody can sit there and say, don't say that. Right? It's like, okay, at least copy editing, going over the flyer before you send out that Zoom meeting. Let's just look it over. All right, I think we have made it to the end here. I hope that everyone had a good experience. I guess this thing gets recorded and posted up, and had some people in here. Anybody have anything on our way out?
Well, just don't get COVID.
What's that?
Take care of yourself. Don't get COVID.
Yeah, everybody avoid the vid.
Yes.
Thank all of you for participating and sharing of yourselves to everyone. It's tough, and thanks everyone for coming.
All right, everyone, have a good one. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys.